Realize that there's no sound. Okay, here I am on this platform. Now you can hear me. So I'll just recap real quick. My name is Evan Pallavi. I work for Stateless, where we help build fashion startups. And today we're going to be talking about what makes a great founder. What are the qualities that most contribute to shaping a great brand? And so those qualities are the main sort of topics that we'll be covering are having a strong purpose, know what you don't know, and being a great communicator. So digging further into those categories, so having a strong purpose. First of all, like you want to have something that really is driving you to get out of bed in the morning. What is the thing that is going to make you excited to build this brand for the next several years, if not the rest of your life? And so that could be maybe you have seen a really incredible business opportunity, like a hole in the market or a problem that you want to solve through building a brand. Or maybe you have a really strong creative vision that you really want to get out into the world and you're really, really passionate about it. Or maybe you have a philanthropic initiative behind your brand that is really motivating to you and you feel can really make a great difference in the world. It could be any of those things, or it could be something else. And it's just, what is that thing that's going to give you that passion? And then that passion as a leader is contagious. So knowing what is driving you, why you're starting this brand, and having that thing that's invigorating you, all of the people that you're leading are going to really should be energized by that. And you know, no matter what you're paying them, the value of your passion is going to far outweigh any sort of salary. It's going to really get people excited to work on your brand, excited to work with you, and yeah, and that's just really important. So the next thing is knowing what you don't know, so basically it's nice if you are bringing some sort of expertise to the table. If you have maybe a strong business background or expertise in finance or an expertise in, it could be design or, you know, something creative, or it could just be expertise from being a great leader, and you possess all these qualities and you're bringing a sort of organized mentality to the situation. But it's also important to know that you're going to need a whole team of experts. You're going to need people that specialize in so many different areas, and it's really unreasonable for a single entrepreneur or even co-founders to know everything and know everything at a deep expert level. So understanding the holes in your knowledge and being able to identify them and then hire the people necessary to fill in those holes. And so what I always say is that it's nice to know enough to just being able to ask the right questions. So if you feel like there is a certain gap in knowledge in maybe it's your knowledge of e-commerce, or maybe it's your knowledge of branding or distribution, just kind of doing enough research and talking to people to feel like versed enough that you can identify the correct talent, and then when you're working with that talent, knowing enough to ask the right questions. So knowing enough to say, have we considered this? Or what can you tell me about this? Or do we have a plan in place for this? Those kinds of things are really important. And then you're then you know you have all the pieces in place in your team to be filling all of those spots, and then you also can just feel confident enough to kind of just be on top of all of the moving parts of your business. And And then it's also having a clear vision is important, but it's also important to be flexible. So you know, like what we talked about, you know, you have your strong purpose, you know why you're creating it. Knowing exactly what you're creating can change. You know, whatever that driving purpose is can turn into something that evolves over time, because as you gain more knowledge and you research things on your own and you bring more expertise onto your team, you're building up that sort of vision. You're building up, oh, well, I didn't think about this, or I didn't know about this initially. And that can shape how you approach, whether it's your product or your distribution or how you market yourself. Like all of that can kind of change over time. But you still, as that changes, you want to make sure that you are the first person that's ahead of it, and that you are always clear, at least in what you're communicating. And if you're communicating, I need to know more about this, or I need more options, I need to see more options before I make a decision here, you're still just being clear about that. So again, it's having a clear but flexible vision. And then the last thing is being a great communicator. So that kind of overlaps with what I was just talking about in just, you don't always have to have all of the answers, but you still need to be clear and concise in how you're delivering any questions that you might have, any things that might need more time, any sort of plans of attack. They still should all have, you know, clear communication coming from you, because you're really setting the tone for your team. You're setting the tone as far as that passion that you're talking about, but you're also setting the tone as far as how organized you are and how clear you are and how well you're communicating and how well you're on top of all of these moving parts, so that no one in your team, no one on your team can kind of get lost and or feel like they have the ability to slack off. If you're always driving and moving things forward, and they can always know that, you know, that my leader is on top of things, I'm never going to fall behind. So yeah, and then also just being thorough. So it really, like, you can't put enough value on your ability to email. So if you are one of those emailers that kind of just send some grammatically incorrect quick thing from your phone while you're doing something else that has a lot of missing pieces and can be very confusing, you could end up actually adding a lot more time to the process of building your brand, because whoever you're communicating to might just be confused. And so at the same time, you don't want to send mile-long emails that take away time to just dissect them. So just kind of finding that balance of making sure you are thoroughly communicating your vision and your direction to your team, but also being, you know, as concise with it as possible. So it's all about just kind of moving things forward, setting that tone, being organized, and having, you know, everyone that is working for you just have full confidence in you. And again, that confidence doesn't need to come from them assuming that you know everything, because they want to be contributing value, of course, and you need a lot of people to be contributing different pieces of value, but they at least can have that confidence in just knowing, I'm always going to be able to rely on a direction, or at least a set of tasks or questions that need to be answered from my founder. And so, yeah, so all of those things, kind of thinking about them, working on them, they're not things that you're born with necessarily. There's sure a lot of people can tell you certain entrepreneurial qualities that are part of your innate character, but these are all things that you can build within yourself and can work on. And and then the idea is that it's all contributing to building something that's really effective and powerful. So having that vision, doing the right research and bringing on the right talent on your team, being a great communicator, all of that's filling in to create a really great brand. And so for me, I've worked with tons and tons of different founders for startups, and these are just kinds of the things that I hope for when I'm working with a client, because it really consistently delivers the best results. It allows my team to really do our best work, because we have, we have faith from the founder in that they know what they don't know and can rely on us to kind of bring our expertise to the table. But then we're also, not operating in sort of ambiguity, and we kind of know what we're working towards and why we're working towards it. And we always end up delivering the best results. And so in my particular department, I'm a director of brand development at Stateless. And so we kind of rely on the founder to just kind of give us that initial sort of, purpose behind the brand, how they see it looking and feeling and everything initially, and just kind of having some sort of clarity to work with to begin with. Then we can kind of help them shape it and evolve it from there, and maybe help them think about things that they weren't considering before. And if they really are what I was talking about, like they really are honest about what they don't know, then that really helps us kind of feel room to bring our expertise to the table, and to really just kind of, feel like, okay, they're going to really let us do our thing. They're going to let us make this as great as possible, because we always want the brand to be amazing. Like, we never have any type of client where we aren't wanting to make something as beautiful and meaningful as possible. So knowing that we have a client that we feel confident that trusts us to really do that, and is going to say, if we say, hey, you could really use this, or place emphasis on this, or maybe it's you could really spend money here, that could be really important. And they kind of trust us, or at least are going to be open to having those thorough conversations with us, and make a firm decision about it, I think is really important. So those are all the different pieces, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. It can be about leadership and being a great founder, or it can be just general thoughts about branding and starting a fashion company. Services. So Born a Wolf says he's having difficulty locating a U.S. activewear supplier that offers print-on-demand services. So I guess what you mean by that is that you want to be able to print on your clothing. So Stateless has a network of vendors all over the country and all over the world that might be able to help you with that. That's in our production department, but you can reach out to us at makersrow.com/stateless. That can help find the right vendor for you. Does anyone else have any other questions? All right. Well, yeah. So again, I really appreciate you guys being here, and I hope that this was helpful in shaping what you guys need to think of while you're building your brands, and what's important to you, and a part of it is another thing that I should mention while I'm just waiting to see if there are any other questions is. You're building something that's bigger than yourself. So your brand, the ultimate sort of vision of your brand isn't necessarily just kind of an execution of your own tastes and interests. So that's something that's definitely helpful when a client is really, they're passionate, there's a part of themselves in the brand, but just a part, because if it's kind of based fully on the spontaneity of your interests, then the brand can kind of be all over the place. So it should really be an execution of an important but singular part of yourself that is exciting to you, that drives you and you want to work on every day, but it's not based on how you're feeling that particular day, because that can just end up in a very sort of chaotic brand and just overall execution. So it's something that you believe in, that you want to do, and you're going to try to hone in on that and shape it as and refine it as best as possible. So here's another question from JB. Do you recommend a business plan or business model to set up a strategic plan, or both? I'm not planning on seeking outside funding. Where should I spend my time? What should I spend my time on? So actually, in my last talk, which you can find on Instagram, the Makers Row Instagram TV, we talked a little bit about this and sort of all the important things to think about when starting an apparel company. So it's just, I kind of laid out all the different pieces that I feel like are most important to consider off the top, and areas to do research and areas to plan out, so that when you go to execute and start hiring people, then it's kind of all following that cohesive vision. So one of the first things is, yes, building out a business plan. And like we talked about, it can be flexible, it can be open and evolve over time. But if your business plan maybe just starting with the why, what is your mission? It doesn't have to be perfectly articulated, but just what are you passionate about? What is the opportunity? And then and then just thinking about what are the pieces that I need to start to put in place. So here are some other questions. Okay, I think there's some in, no, I don't see any in the submitted questions on Instagram. When pitching your brand, how should we start? Like when in front of buyers? When in front of buyers. Okay, so first, first of all, from my experience, it's just important to first kind of state your value and your mission, like we were talking about. So it's important both from the sort of thing that drives you starting the company up until, pitching it, is knowing where you feel like you fit into the market, and what your value is, what problem are you solving, what are you contributing, and why should your brand exist, and then the vision for it, the mission with it, and the vision for it, and what the long-term vision is. And so if you can really quickly sum up why you exist and what you're going to become, that if you have that down to a sentence or two, that's going to be valuable no matter what you're doing, whether you're pitching to a potential buyer, or potential investor, or potential business partner or employee. All of that, that is going to be the sort of leading thing anytime. That's the first thing I want to hear from a client, and it's the first thing that a buyer is going to want to hear for sure. And then, if you're doing wholesale, having a lookbook and having a showroom partner is a good idea, a good thing to look into, because even today, if you're not doing any sort of live showroom, you still can have people that have the right connections that are going to bring you together with the right people, and they're constantly in discussions with buyers, and are going to kind of know where to place you and help you strategize that. So that's, again, look into showrooms, look into wholesale representatives, and just kind of do that knowing what you don't know process with that whole world, I think will be really helpful. I hope that answered your question. How do you make sure your team stays on track as a founder and that everyone understands the vision for your company, even as you start to scale the business? Great question. First of all, how do you make sure your team stays on track? That comes from what we were talking about with being organized, concise, but also thorough in your communication. And yeah, and then again, all of this relates to each other. So knowing what you don't know, really doing any sort of preliminary research to be able to ask the right questions in all of the different categories of starting a company will allow you to kind of know at least the pieces that you need to be on top of. And then, as far as like specific tools of staying on track of everything, there's a million different sort of organizational project management tools out there. But one other big thing to answer your question is keeping everyone on your team following the same mission and vision. We like to ideally create a style guide for our clients. So a style guide is basically the handbook for your brand that articulates the mission and feeling and voice. So it's like a 30 to 60 page document that has, thoroughly thought out all of these different guidelines. So then when anyone is going to work with your brands, they can take this document and refer to it and execute your brand cohesively. So that's how you scale it. So going through the process initially of making the style guide helps you really think through all the pieces of your brand, and then having the document for many years to come is how you can scale it while maintaining that vision and cohesion. My startup is, this is a question, my startup is based on a philanthropic mission, that's awesome, of helping animals. Should I start with a firm that focuses on mission-led branding? That's not necessarily. If it's a good branding, if you're talking about branding, if it's a good branding agency, then they can be adaptable. So for us, we've worked with plenty of philanthropic-led businesses as well as purely commercial businesses. But it's really just an agency that can really, you feel confident is going to take your vision and execute it and care about it. And so that for me, if a client is passionate, it can come from any angle really, and we're just going to work with it and evolve it. And I think when it comes to maybe your marketing agency, like who's taking that brand and then getting it out there, maybe a marketing agency that has more, or PR agency that has more connections in that particular field, that maybe there are certain publications that you want to get into that are philanthropically focused. Like maybe it could be helpful from that regard. That's sort of after you've created your brand, after you've created your products. Maybe there might be some people that have that sort of specified set of connections that is going to be helpful for you. Which small up-and-coming brands are best-in-class examples of branding? Great question. I kind of have my go-to few that I really admire, because my favorite thing is to build brand worlds and really think through the sort of culture and lifestyle of your customers and how that translates into all sorts of visuals, all sorts of graphics and lifestyle photography and events. So brands that I feel like do that exceptionally well are Tracksmith is a brand for runners that I think is super beautiful and well done. Camp Collection is a brand that has clothing that is inspired by summer camp, like nostalgic summer camp. And it's just really fun and great. And then Rowing Blazers is another one that I really love, that is kind of taking this sort of modernized approach to Ivy League sports and integrating that into their apparel. So Tracksmith, Rowing Blazers, and Camp Collection are three that I would recommend checking out. Oh, and just for a very different, more like high-end kind of vibe, I would check out the brand Rains. Just like it's like raincoats, but done with a lot of originality and style to it. So Queen Jen asked, what should be the first thing you consider when coming up with your logo? It's funny, I don't mean to be a broken record, but that vision and purpose that we talked about as the thing that is going to make you a great leader that's going to make you great in a pitch. It's also going to be really important in shaping something as specific as a logo, because a logo to me should be the simplest representation of what your company is about, what you want it to feel like, what its purpose is, and it should be something that can then kind of be the starting point that can inform the rest of the brand identity. So really, when we're thinking about a logo, we're not thinking about something that's necessarily going to be the most unique shape that you've never seen before, or it's more about, does this communicate or start to communicate something that can be a larger, unique brand identity? Does it fit into a larger visual system and message? So those are the things that we think about first. Yeah, so thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm sorry if I missed anyone's questions. But you can find us at makersrow.com/stateless. And the other half of Stateless can also help you in developing any sort of clothing line that you might be working on. We have a team of fashion designers, tech designers, and production experts, and a large network of manufacturers that we can find the best way to develop your product. And then my department again is developing your brand from soup to nuts. So we'll do the brand identity, we'll do photography, we'll do your website, everything that you need to launch. And so I hope that today's talk was helpful in just kind of the things that I've distilled down from working with so many great founders and knowing what has yielded the best results. So yeah, I'll hope to see you all again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in.